I thought I'd start off with Joe's words, you know, in this wee booklet of, you know, a lot of Joe's sayings, and how that all came about. Obviously, if we go back to December 2011, you know, a horrible, horrible event. Joe just collapsed. It was an undiagnosed heart condition, Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, they call it. It's basically a short circuit of the electrical bits in the heart, and his heart just stopped, collapsed in the house, had to give him CPR, and we got him to the hospital. His heart started on the way there, and he was 5 days in a coma before we had to switch off the machine. So, you know, really, really horrible event, but for me and my family, you can imagine what we were like. It was just numb. You know, a fabulous, fabulous young man taken from us. And then it was a school, you know, Joe was in his last year at Taylor High School in Carfin, and tragically at the same time there was one former teacher and another teacher died round about the same time as Joe, so they were having a joint memorial service in the 3 months after, you know, in March 2012. So I said, look, do you mind if I say a few words, because the support that we got, you know, from our whole community, not just the churches, our neighbours, our friends, the schools, and it was all the schools. It touched the whole community. And I just wanted to say thank you. And as the event, you know, as the memorial service came up, I was thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to talk about? I just, you know, trying to find some inspiration. So I went up to Joe's room, and it was pretty much as it was left. And I was looking about his desk, and I thought, oh, there's all those old school jotters, and I opened them up, and I saw his handwriting, and his handwriting's not brilliant, but, you know, that kind of amused me, and I thought, I'll try and get inspiration. As I kept reading the jotters, and I started going, wait a minute, this isn't maths that he's writing about here, or it's not, you know, some of the other subjects. And I thought, that's actually diaries. And it was, do you know your school jotters? I know, take a wee bit to remember back, but your school jotters, when you got to the end of a subject and then you had all these pages at the back that were blank, you'd actually use them to start from the back writing diaries. And I've got to say, when I discovered them, it was such a joy, you know, because I could read it and I could actually, as I was reading, hear Joe speaking it. And when I showed it to my wife Veronica and my daughter Angela, we were all the same. It was like, oh, this is fabulous. And his diaries are full of just, you know, teenage life, just the normal things that a teenager in Scotland, or actually any part of the world, goes through. But in amongst was all the bits and pieces about Joe's faith and how devoted he was to God and to Christ and his church, and all his wee sayings and all the things that influenced him. And as I was reading them, a lot of the stuff that I was reading, I could remember the conversations with Joe, you know, because a lot of what he wrote in his diary, he'd already had a conversation with myself, Veronica, Angela, probably some of his friends and other folks, so it really brought him back to life. So at the memorial event in the school, I used a couple of the quotes from the diary. I held up the diaries and I said, look what I found, and it was like, you know, everyone was really interested at that point, and I read out a couple of the quotes. Following that, I was speaking with Jerry McCormick, the head teacher of Taylor High, and he said, you know, you should probably do something with these diaries. 3 months after Joe died, that's, you know, you're still incredibly numb, still trying to take it in and figure out what the new normal is. But we thought, yeah, probably a thing, but it took us until the September. Veronica and I sat down, and Angela, and we sat down, just went through his diary and picked out all the quotes. So that ended up, we actually just gave, you know, here's all the quotes, and Taylor High put together this lovely booklet. And it's full of inspiration. I don't know if you've had a chance to read any of it, but it's full of inspirational quotes, and it really shows Joe's devotion and his faith and what he was like as a person. You know, I'll pick one at random. You know, here's an interesting one. I don't really pray as fervently as I'd have hoped, I felt like I stopped doing God's will. You know, for someone as devout. And then the following day says, I'm trying to develop the virtue of perseverance with the help of God, and it's working. And that same day then says, I believe that in God's hands you can achieve anything. And you see the flow. I'm doing well, I'm doing badly, I'll pray a bit more, I'll get a bit more devotion, and I'll come together. So that got us to Joe's words, and we printed a few copies, gave them out to friends and family, and the school wanted a few copies, so we gave them out. And then we started getting word, can I get a copy, can I get a copy? And I thought, oh crikey, there's a bit more to this than we thought. So I then approached Carfin Grotto, the shop, and said to them, look, there's a few folk asking, can I get a copy of Joe's words? Because folk that have read it have found some sort of inspiration, or it's connected with them in some way. And you know, there was more of a demand, so I said, can I leave you a few copies? So I said, yeah, that'd be great. And the first question was, how much is it? I said, no, it's free. There's no charge. This is you know, to try and help folk. So that then grew and grew, and we just ended up having to print more and more copies. To date, we're now, it's something like 4,500 copies have been distributed, and they've been distributed throughout the UK and actually throughout the world as well. We know, like, when I see the Facebook messages and whatnot, they're certainly in Africa, they're in India, they're in Canada, America, South America, Australia, New Zealand, and it's just, I'm quite gobsmacked, the truth be told. You know, I'm going, this is just Joe's diaries, and you know, for folk to find that in it, it's fantastic. Because if I look at the way folk react to Joe's diaries, I can see Joe, just him and his personality, because his personality was, if he was standing, see if he'd come in this room right now, he'd have been sitting talking to every single one of you, finding a topic that interests you and just chat away to you and relate to you, and you know, you instantly get on with him. And the way I usually put it is, he was the kind of person, if he was talking to you, you'd feel like you were the most important person in the world at that point in time. It made you feel great. And that's what I see, you know, when we hear folk asking for his diaries and want to know more about Joe. It's like, it's that same, there's some connection there that I can't explain, that folk really, really like what he's saying and get his personality. So as I say, that's where Joe's words has come from. If I then look at what's happened over the past 8.5 years, you know, when we were distributing the diaries on this basis, not long after Joe died, they put together a charity event, Climbing Ben Nevis for Joe, and that happened in April 2012. And well, the official count was 177, it's probably nearer 200 folk climbed Ben Nevis for Joe. We raised £40,000 for charity, and it was an incredible event, and it was a load of young folk and a load of folk my age and slightly older and everyone in between. Aye. It was just a brilliant event, and I can remember coming back down, and Paul Lawler brought the head of the Lochaber Mountain Rescue to say hello, and he rhymed off some things, and it took me a wee bit to assimilate. And he said, we have never taken this amount of folk up the mountain. Usually if it's a charity event, you might get 20, you know, but he said, you've had 177 people up the mountain. That is way beyond anything we've ever done in the past. And he said, the date that you've done it, he said, you got up to the top and it was a clear sky. You could stand in the top of the mountain for as long as you wanted. He said, that is so unusual at this time of the year. He said, I'd guarantee if you came yesterday or you go tomorrow, you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd be at the top for 2 or 3 minutes, take your photos, and you'd be heading back down. And I said to him, but see when that date was set, you just knew it was going to be fine. Just knew it was going to be okay. So with that Ben Nevis climbing, that was extraordinary. And his pals kept on saying, we need to repeat this, we need to repeat this. So eventually they did this year, you know, and there wasn't 177, I think it was either 7 or, there was 7 of us went up the mountain this year again. And again raised funds for different charities. But in the back of that, there was the Scottish Catholic Observer picked up my Facebook page. I was trying to get donations, and they said, "Oh, can we do a wee story about that?" I said, "Fine, no problem at all." So they did a wee story about and relating back to Joe. And then John from Sancta Familia picked that up, and he said, "Look, I've got my own testimony about Joe. I don't know if any of you watched the video where John's interviewing me." But he gives, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, John. Is that okay? Aye. But he shared his own testimony that in 2012 he had anxiety problems, and as a young man, and I'm sure everyone's experienced something similar, where you're the one out of your peer group, where you've maintained your faith and you're still practicing your faith, and others are lapsing and whatnot. So in that kind of thing, and he went to Carfin Grotto and he picked up one of Joe's words, and he just found it so inspirational at the time. And he said, when he then saw the Scottish Catholic Observer article, that he wanted to just come and talk and see, you know, learn a wee bit more about Joe and Joe's words. So we did the interview, then that just went out of control. It was unbelievable. I think we got to 10,000 views pretty quickly. Recently I've just looked at it, it's about 20,000 views. And then that kind of inspired a further kind of, wait a minute, we should be doing some more about this, and again, John, you're getting the credit. John had a wee chat with Bishop Toll and said, look, you know, here's a young lad, it's really inspirational, we should be doing a bit more. So Bishop Toll then said, okay, right, this is worth looking into, and you know, I need to be careful about how I describe this. It's worth looking into, so the advice to us, through the priest that he's appointed to look at this, is, look, you need to establish the devotion, and you need to establish, as they call it, the cult around Joe. You know. So we started doing that. We thought, got a group of people together, there's about half a dozen of us run Joe's Faith, and we've now put together 2 of these devotional events. This is the 3rd one coming up. And I've got to say, when these devotional events, they're something different. You know, the kind of reaction you get from people. You'll see a lot of that video, those videos on the outside of the glass chapel at Carfin. You know, and you can see it in people's faces, you can see it the way they're talking. They just find the event so inspiring. And it helps their faith. There's folk from all walks of life come to it. There's roughly about 200 has come to each event so far. Next one's on Monday. And it's exactly the same thing you get from them, that, you know, this is just so nice. Because it's run by us, the laity. You know, I know Father Broderick was there, but he's a very dear family friend. But the actual event itself, it's all laity. And, you know, we run it, and it's a kind of, although there's a structure to it, there's a nice informal approach to it that you just hopefully feel your faith. And that's so Joe. You know, if I look at Joe and I say, what kind of person was he? You know, what kind of lad was he? It's a wee bit difficult as his dad, because I've known him from, well, before birth, obviously. And you see him growing up and whatnot, but he had this really, really strong faith about him. And he lived his faith. He loved people. He loved being about people. He loved Jesus. He loved God. He prayed often. A number of times we live, you know, 6 minutes walk from Carfin Grotto, and he loved just going across there and taking a wee wander round. I remember he used to be wandering around, he'd be away, and then he'd come back 2 hours later, and Veronica in particular said, where have you been? Oh, I've just been a walk around the grotto for 2 hours. Yeah, I was there, but then I went up to the church and there was a service on, and I didn't realise it was funeral, but I just went in anyway, you know, and I just sat there and went through it. But he lived his faith in that way. But he lived his faith the way we're asked to live it as well, as individuals. He cared about you. and he really would put himself out to help you. I saw that often as his dad. It was tiny wee things, tiny wee ways, you know that bit when you get at night and then, you know, he'd come down and he'd be making himself a bit of toast usually, and he'd come in and he'd say, anyone want a bit of toast? Do you know that thing when you go, anyone want a bit of toast? You're really hoping everyone says no. Right. But we'd all go, oh yeah, that's great, yeah, I'll have a bit of toast. And you could see him going, yeah, no problem, okay. Really, you know, that's really what it was, like dead enthusiastic. So wee things like that it was actually after when he was in the coma for 5 days, the number of folk that came to us and said, Joe helped me by, like it was a wee project at school, there's a photographer here, isn't it? One of the chaps is interested in photography. Well, there you are. But there was somebody at school was doing, you know, their project and nobody would volunteer to help them. And Joe said, do you know what? When do you need it? Right, I've got time there. Come on, I'll do it with you. So he'd be the guy that said, no, you need help, I'll go and help you. There's loads of instances of that we got to hear about. And he was, you would think somebody that's really spiritual and maybe helps people, they might be a wee bit staid or maybe a wee bit boring. It was anything but. Loved a laugh. He could see the funny side of Pretty Well Living. He'd probably be in here and he'd be looking at something and he'd say, oh, look at that. And you know, have you heard that expression, dance like nobody's watching and sing like nobody's listening? Right, that was Joe. He just, you know, spontaneously he'd come out, belt out a song or something like that, or a wee saying, or have a wee dance. There's a part of the video there, it's a house party and you see him giving it his grooves and moves. So he really was a, you know, very gregarious person as well.